In today's episode, I'll be giving my review and reaction to the 1999 film Magnolia. So let's jump right into Magnolia. Do something, man. People are questioning you. Shut up. Shut up. Okay, yep, do that. Sure, guys. Stupid and dumb. Just an idiot. Get your shit together, son. Fuck it. I loved it. Welcome to the dub cast. Magnolia was released on December 17th, 1999. The genre of the film is a drama. The runtime is 3 hours and 8 minutes. The budget is $37 million. The director is one Paul Thomas Anderson, who I've watched Hard 8 and Boogie Nights. Did both reviews on this channel, so go check those out if you're interested. And I also have seen There Will Be Blood by Paul Thomas Anderson. I think of those three movies, There Will Be Blood was definitely the strongest. Boogie Nights I thought was okay, and Hard 8 I did not like at all. So this movie stars Jeremy Blackman, Tom Cruise, Melinda Dillon, Philip Baker Hall, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Ricky Jay, William H. Macy, Alfred Molina, Julianne Moore, Michael Murphy, John C. Reilly, Jason Robards, and Melora Walters. So going into the movie, starting with my overarching review. If you haven't seen the channel before, I like to give my overarching review at the beginning and then go through my notes and give my thoughts and reactions throughout the film. We'll give it a score after the review and compare that amongst the other movies we've reviewed so far up until this point. So, starting out with my overarching review, this was not my type of movie at all. All of this quote-unquote dramatic build-up for the characters to barely interweave storylines at all at the end. I thought this movie was way too long, way too drawn out, in my opinion. Kind of a waste of 3 hours for me. I watched this on a Saturday morning. Wish I had that time back to go out, do something, work out, or do something productive with my life, but here we are. Tom Cruise was decent in this movie, but this is nowhere near his best performance. I do think his character is somewhat compelling, especially his arc throughout the movie, but not really something that, is going to save the movie for me. Some of the stories I just flat out did not care about at all, considering there's like 8 happening at the same time. It was really hard to be invested in one and care a lot about one of the stories. One of the storylines that especially was just nothing to me was the former kid game winner show, not the one who was actually winning the show at the time, the kid who had won before and had grown up in life. That one just did nothing for me. Also, Linda's story was pretty not great. Just didn't really care about either of those storylines at all. Thought we could have maybe condensed this a little bit, moved this down to a couple storylines, but what's a movie like this without 18 million different storylines that we don't need? Did we have 7 or 8 main characters all barely interacting with each other throughout the movie? Like, what was this, man? I know some people think this movie's a masterpiece and this is one of the best movies of all time because I've seemingly when I go on TV time, everyone thinks that these movies are great and I'm just missing out. Obviously, people who like the movies are more willing to comment on them, but this one had good Rotten Tomato scores, good crowd scores. I'm not seeing it at all. I think this movie could have done better minimizing some of the storylines and going a bit more in depth with some of the other characters, like Tom Cruise's character, the actual Game Kid winner show. Those two are the most intriguing storylines to me. Not to mention, I'm not a fan of is just the flat out ridiculous that occurs at the end of the movie. Frogs falling out of the sky. What was the buildup of that? I guess there was a Bible verse on a stop sign, but what was the reasoning that ever happened? No explanation of anything, and that was just a stupid twist. That feels like, they're just throwing in something at the end when this movie clearly has tried to stick to being like somewhat serious. I mean, you have the beginning and the end with the coincidence that all happened on the same day or whatever, but it's seeming like this movie was trying to be mostly serious throughout. So when all of a sudden frogs just start falling out of the sky, it's like, what are we doing? That just completely took me out of the movie, and I was already very de-invested in this movie anyways. So most of the stories at the end just felt pretty unresolved as well. In my opinion, I didn't feel good, and like good, I use that term loosely, but I didn't feel good about how any of the stories ended. It kind of just seems like we're going to go on with another day. I don't know, like, obviously, not every movie has to end happy, but it was like, what were the conclusions to any of the storylines? This felt like a waste of a pretty star-studded cast. Philip Baker Hall, I know I liked him in Hard 8, even though I didn't like that movie at all. Tom Cruise, you got Tom Cruise to do this movie after doing Eyes Wide Shut. I think I read that. just, Julianne Moore. Like, we have Philip Seymour Hoffman. We have good actors and actresses, John C. Reilly, in this movie. And we're just wasting them on this 3 hour, like, kind of nothing burger for me. Um, I did like the stuff with the actual kid game show winner, Stanley. I did mention that before. I feel like that was the strongest part of the movie to me, about the exploitation of kid superstars and the pressure he faced at a young age. So, with all that being said, you can probably expect, but my review is not positive this movie. I would recommend this movie to nobody. I would not ask anybody to watch this movie or even bother anyone to watch this movie. 3 hours and 8 minutes of just nothing. This is mostly a major waste of time for me. So the score, I'm giving it a 4.9. That score is held up by Stanley's storyline and Tom Cruise's performance in this. That's the only thing holding it up to a 4.9. Otherwise, this would be like threes, maybe even below. So, where does this 4.9 hold up against other movies we reviewed so far? So, fittingly, this is movie number 30 of 31 movies. The only movie it beats out is Hard 8. And that was a tough debate for me between Hard 8 and Magnolia. Hard 8 is only like an hour and a half, so it's not that big of a waste of time. It's like this is like two Hard 8s all in one. But, I feel like this movie was better, had better high highs than Hard 8. So that's why this movie beats out Hard 8. So this is the second of three Paul Thomas Anderson movies we've reviewed on the channel. It beats Hard 8 by 0.2 points, but loses out to Boogie Nights by 2 whole points. I gave that a 6.9 on the channel. So this is worse than Last Samurai, which was an 8.0. That's another Tom Cruise movie. And basically everyone else in this cast is also in Hard 8 and Boogie Nights. They have very similar casts interwoven there. John C. Reilly appeared in all three of these movies, so the deal with that. So that'll close out the Dubcast graphic. I'm kind of worried that I'm gonna get slandered for this review, but I stand by my truth, bro. I can't be worried about people slandering me. This is my truth. Magnolia was awful. I hated this movie. So with that being said, let's dive into my thoughts and reactions throughout the film. So starting it off, we have the coincidence all happening at the same time, which is what I kind of had decent hopes for this movie at the start, because it was like, what is going on here? We have coincidences all happening. The Greenberry Hill murder, where they're just all at Greenberry Hill. The scuba diver death. Then he's up in a tree, and then the kid commits suicide while falling, and he gets shot. He would have lived if he didn't get shot by his fighting parents. So that was all really interesting stuff. And I was like, where is this leading to? No real follow-up or anything, and maybe I'm missing some grand, big, deep message that, there's coincidence and there's life and frogs fell out of the sky. Maybe, man, maybe. But what was, I'm not even going to address that. So we start this one out introducing to all of our characters. It's kind of a tough scene to listen to because you can barely hear the audio with the music behind it. Our first real introduction is this police officer played by John C. Reilly. He has an interaction with this woman. He's serving an arrest warrant in her apartment, and it's funny. She's going back and forth with him. He's trying to be nice about it, but he does have to get his arrest in, and he finds a dead man in the closet. This is interwoven with boring ass scenes of a dying old man that really there's no setup to what this guy is or why he's important or who his relationships are, but we're just supposed to feel sad for him that he's dying. So after this, we're introduced to maybe the best character in the movie, Tom Cruise's character. He says, respect the cock and tame the cunt. This was funny. Tom Cruise is just like, I don't want to say aura. Tom Cruise's spirit in this movie is very funny. The way he's like this guy who's trying to sell his life advice for guys to get with women and do all these shows and stuff in hotels and everything like that. So that at least was funny. There is some comedic breaks between what was mostly serious, but this movie was pretty much a joke. So his one-liners consistently throughout this movie did make me laugh a little bit. So we have Claudia. She is met at her hotel room or her apartment by the person who runs the game show. And yeah, this is Philip Baker Hall. He comes in to try and reconcile with her. She's not having it, so we don't really know the history there, but she freaks out on him, and so this was interesting to see, I guess. And guess who shows up to Claudia's place but the police officer from the first scene, John C. Riley. So, due to the disturbance call, he makes his way into her apartment, tries to figure out what was happening between that. Obviously, they heard her yelling at Philip Baker Hall's character. So, they need to come in here and make sure everything's all good. The music, I thought by this point, was annoying me. Do we really need it in the background of every scene? Like, I feel like I'm nitpicking here, and maybe I am. Maybe I'm not, but like this was just too much. Like, it was just so yeah. Right here, I'm like, there's 9 storylines going on here at the same time. It's a bit hard to know who's who and what's what, and who knows who and who's talking about who. It's like, what are we doing? I don't even know who this person is. We have Claudia at her house alone. We have the police officer's arc. We have the guy who runs the game show. We have the actual kid game show winner. We have the former kid game show winner. We have Linda. We have the dying old man and Philip Seymour Hoffman. We have Tom Cruise. That's 8 alone I just named. Like, what are we doing, bro? This is way too hard to follow. And, maybe I'll get killed for people saying I'm not paying close enough attention to this. You go tell me what all these characters are and what the importance of all of them, all 9 of them and all 10 of them. What did they all have to be in the film for, and what was their purpose served? We couldn't have just cut out one of them. The guy's trying to get braces so he can ask the bartender out on a date. That's important to Magnolia, right? Dude, this movie was... Anyways, so already right here, I was getting pretty frustrated trying to keep up with this. Maybe I'm simple-minded. My brain can't handle these storylines. I don't know. So keep it moving. We have Stanley. He is a kid in the game show. He's killing it while the host of the show gets hammered. After the Claudia incident, he only has a couple days to live, I think. So that's why he's went to go talk to Claudia, but she doesn't want anything to do with him. So now he's going to drink it out, take a couple shots before the game show. I wonder if hosts of TV shows actually do this and just get hammered before the show. I think with kids you wouldn't want to do that, but granted, I don't know when this movie is supposed to take place. This movie did come out in 1999, so this is at least 25 years ago. I don't see like Jeff Probst, getting hammered. I don't see any of those reality. I don't see like maybe Steve Harvey drinks. I don't know. I feel like they wouldn't drink, but obviously this guy's going through a lot, so he has to get hammered. And Stanley, before the show, needs to go to the bathroom, but of course, they need to exploit his ass and make sure that he's answering all the questions and on TV that he has no time to run to the bathroom for like a minute or two. This was, ends up playing out poorly for him, but it was like we couldn't just let the kid go to the bathroom for a couple minutes. Commercial breaks, what are they, a half a second? Like, I don't know. I feel like worst you could have done is give him a cup or something. I'm just saying. So here we go. Philip Seymour Hoffman is the nurse, hanging out with this old dude who's dying. He's becoming a disaster. He drops pills everywhere that they're supposed to help the dying old man, give him morphine, and he's in pain, and the dogs get the pills on the floor, which is like, what? Obviously, Philip Seymour Hoffman, some like sexual like character that we're supposed to be like, because he's ordering like Playboy magazines and whatever. But it's like, there's really not enough time. Like, even this movie was 3 hours, and there's really not even enough time to flush out these characters. Like, I don't give a shit about Philip Seymour Hoffman's character. I don't give a shit about the old dying man he's taking care of. I don't give a shit about Claudia, who's not even part of that arc. But I don't really care about Linda. She's kind of just like a depressed, like, wife. I mean, I guess their storyline's somewhat something at the end, but I don't know. This dude's a disaster. Dropping pills. The poor dogs are eating up the pills because they don't know better, and there's fucking like 10 of them. So we cut to Frank. He has been doing an interview. His mother actually died, and he lied about his mother actually dying. So Frank is Tom Cruise's character, and he's like interviewed by this woman who takes him to the side at his convention, and he is like very open and very like rah rah about his answers and everything like that. So while he's been doing this interview, this has of course been intercut with like the 9 other storylines happening in this movie. He mentions that his mother raised him, but that's a lie. His mother actually died. So this will come up again later. But it's interesting to see this Frank. He starts here in confidence, and as the movie goes, he kind of dips after he realizes everything that's happened in his life. So we have Linda going to the family lawyer, and she admits to him that she never loved her husband. She does not want any money from the will because she never did love him, and now actually she does love him and is sad he's going to die and is not ready to move on without him. So, this is a pretty respectable move by Linda to admit this, at least to somebody else. Maybe you think this in your head, but you'd never actually admit it to anybody. So good for Linda for admitting this, but, like, once again, it's Linda. Like, does anybody out there give a shit about what Linda, like, I don't know. Linda in this movie was just really nothing to me, especially if she had one of the lesser prominent storylines. Um, so now you're getting no money and you actually love him. So this is like the worst time to admit that when he's literally on his deathbed, but go off queen, as they say. So we have Stanley still at the game shows. He has to carry the team. I don't know why they should just have him on that team. Those other 2 kids didn't answer a single question. So, of course, Stanley was not allowed to go to the bathroom. And what is the result of that? He pisses himself as a typical, 8 or 9 or 10-year-old would do. The host of the show, though, luckily suffers an attack. That's fucked up that I said that. Not luckily for Stanley, something happens with the host of the show because he has piss running down his leg. He would have to go up on stage and do a 1-versus-1 question versus the adult contestant. But unfortunately, the host of the show, Philip Baker Hall's character, who just found out he's possibly going to die and was drinking before the show, has an attack and goes down after unraveling live on TV. Felt a little bad for that guy throughout the movie. I do like that actor, but once again, it's like this guy's kind of an asshole and we don't really know his story at all. So after the cop is in Claudia's place, like I talked about that fucking 5 minutes ago. Anyways, after the cop is hanging out in Claudia's place and they get everything figured out, they sit down, have a cup of coffee. There's clearly some like outlying tension between them, sexual tension. So the cop somehow secures a date with Claudia. This is a very awkward dynamic, but it works because Claudia probably needs somebody in her life after the incident with the game show host. So there you go. He secures the date. We'll see later what happens on that date. So Stanley will not go up to do the one-on-one questioning because of his accident. And yeah, so that's really like the end of the Stanley. Actually, that's not the end of the Stanley storyline, but that's like the end of him at the game show, which that was my like favorite part of the movie. And now thinking about it, it's like the whole arc of that was a kid pissing his pants. That's where I'm at with this movie. So the nurse, Philip Seymour Hoffman's able to get Frank on the phone for his father. It's like this very traverse. You have to contact a million people in order to get Frank on the phone. He's this mogul of selling, being like having aura, basically. I hate that I keep saying aura. But he's like, now that Frank's all famous, you got to talk to a million people. Plus, he does not want to speak to his dad. He doesn't even admit the existence of his dad in an interview. But the nurse is finally able to get through to Frank on the phone. But as soon as Linda gets home and hears that the nurse is on the phone with Frank, she hangs up the phone, and Frank hangs up his end as well. I thought that this was maybe just going to go nowhere like the rest of this movie, but we do get a resolution on this story at least. But Linda got some hate for Frank, and I think, like reading through everything back, like I must have missed some like running concurrent storyline. But what could it possibly have like? This movie was really just frustrating watch. So once Frank is back from his interview at the seminar / convention, he's of course going to go out and still give his rah-rah speech to the people in the crowd, but he starts to crash out. Everything's not going as well as he thought it would be going. Mentally he's starting to deteriorate, so he's like spiking things and being aggressive, and people just think that's part of his shtick, which it is. But after all this past trauma was brought up with the interview, he's really just losing it in this seminar. So we learned that basically his storyline was that Earl, who's the dying man, who I mentioned his name for the first time now, had cheated on his wife. He left all the responsibilities to Frank, and you know, this is probably a couple of years ago, so the man of the house was left to Frank at a young age. So that's why Frank doesn't acknowledge his father. He cheated on him, or he cheated on his wife and left all the responsibilities to him. And while all this is happening, Linda decides she's going to drink the morphine that was supposed to be prescribed for Earl because he's dying in bed. Um, Linda just like went rogue. You know, you can tell throughout the beginning, even from the beginning. I remember her first scene, like she's kind of depressed and like she seems very like, I don't know what the word is, but she seems like aggressive and like things aren't right for Linda. So she drinks the morphine and she's gonna pass out in her car. So all the characters sing a song together, which was a weird scene, but a kind of a respectable one, where they just say it's not going to stop, as they're all kind of in their lowest moments. Stanley had just pissed his leg on the game show. Linda drinks morphine. Frank's going through it at the convention. Earl's about to die. Philip Seymour Hoffman is just being an idiot. The game show host had an attack on air. The former game show guy, who I haven't even mentioned so far, has just made a fool of himself at the bar. The John C. Reilly's cop character lost his gun, so everyone's at their lowest moment saying it's not going to stop, or singing it's not going to stop. But luckily for some of them it will stop, and for some of them we just don't even know what their storyline ends in. So Frank is up first. He confronts his dying father about everything, but they're able to somewhat reconcile. Funny scene of Frank entering the house when he's like interacting with Philip Seymour Hoffman. He's like, "Don't let those fucking dogs touch me, man." So that was funny, that back and forth. He's like, I need to go talk to him, but I better not see one of those fucking dogs. I'm kicking it. So that was funny. Linda is found by a young man who was talking to the police officer early on in the film, and he's basically just robs her, but he calls the cops for her, so she's put in an ambulance. Jimmy had a rocky relationship with Claudia. Jimmy's the game show host. He doesn't know if he touched her, which, like, what are we doing? I'm not even going to address that. So Claudia and the police officer kiss on the date. They found love. They're happy together. Woo woo. Frank crashes out again on his father's bedside. He's just, Frank's a lot right now. This wasn't really a crash out. This was like an emotional crash out. He was just bawling tears through his eyes, very emotional after seeing his father about to die after all these years, whatever, left the responsibilities, you get it. So, of course, after everyone gets their low moment, then they're kind of plateau, getting back to the top. Frogs land on the police officer's car as he sees the former game show guy climbing up a roof to get a stack of money and then put it back, which I don't even know what that was about, but whatever. But that's not even the most ridiculous part of the scene, because frogs are flying from the sky now, and 1 million frogs come into the world and just land on everything and break through roofs and break through cars, and they hide out under a gas station. Just a gas station. I'm just going to say a gas station. So a frog, as Jimmy's about to pull the trigger on his head, end his life after his rough relationship with Claudia, almost dying on the game show. He's taking his way out now. Gun to the head. Nope, a frog right perfectly through the window, right onto the gun. So he drops it and shoots. He's about to shoot himself, but no, the frog saved it. So divine intervention by frogs falling out of the sky. What a coincidence, right? That's our theme of this movie. Coincidence. I don't know. So, did it happen? We zoomed in on a picture frame of it saying, "Did it happen?" on the picture frame. So, did we all just waste 3 hours? I think so, but who knows? So, we get the ending. The dog dies from Philip Seymour Hoffman spilling the pill earlier. That's the end of his storyline, so thank you for that storyline, Paul Thomas Anderson. Frank's father dies. The hospital calls Frank, and he goes to make a visit. So good, I guess, somewhat landing there. Stanley asks his dad to be nicer to him, which I doubt that'll happen. The kid trivia realizes the guy who was trying to get braces the whole movie to impress the bartender realizes that it doesn't matter and then returns the money. And then the last scene of the movie is Claudia smiling. This movie was fucking awful, man. I'm sorry. If you guys liked this movie, then like disregard this review. But I feel like people should be on my side because this was a waste of time. Did it even happen? Like that's the question we're asking, right? And I have not thought about this movie once since I watched it in a good. Well, I've thought about it in a bad way because exterior reasons, but I just did not like this movie at all. So, what were your guys' thoughts on Magnolia? Do you think it's a masterpiece, or do you think it's a piece of dog shit like I do? Leave your comments below. Leave your dislikes. Leave your likes. Um, yeah, pretty scalding review for me, but this movie was just a big waste of time. It's not even like an hour and a half wasted time. This was double that, 3 hours and 8 minutes of just wasted time. Found little to no redeeming qualities in this movie. So, what would you guys score this movie? Am I being way too harsh? Am I missing something? Comment below. For more content like this, subscribe, like. We're on Spotify, YouTube. Besides that, we have weekly NFL streams, weekly Survivor episodes happening right now. UFC 30. Nope, not going to say that. Yeah, so just expect more content on the way. TV shows, movie reviews. Next movie review will be Snatch. I will tease that. I had a much better time watching Snatch than I did watching this movie. So that'll wrap up this video. Thank you guys so much. Don't waste your time and watch this movie if you haven't yet. And as always, be easy.